Alright, I'm really curious about this, because blocking the Nile is some crazy shit.
This dam is absolutely huge. The reservoir behind it will be roughly the same size as London, while the dam itself will be twice as tall as the Golden Gate Bridge. Welcome to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, an epic name for an epic feat of engineering. It's decades in the making and forms part of the country's so-called economic miracle, largely because it has the potential to lift millions of people out of poverty. But it could also be the dangerous spark that ignites a whole new conflict in the region.
Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia are at odds over who controls the world's longest river.
A fight for the Nile.
About to be scrapping over the Nile.
This is the largest dam in Africa, so large it has its own classification. It's a mega dam.
Mega what?
Once complete, it'll produce over 5,000 megawatts of electricity, more than double Ethiopia's current output today, and its reservoir will hold 74 billion cubic meters of water. The numbers here don't get any less overwhelming. The dam itself is made of 10 million cubic meters of roller-compacted concrete and is set to include 2 power stations, 3 spillways, and a saddle dam. The main dam itself will be 145 meters deep by 1.7 kilometers long, while the saddle dam supporting the main structure will be an astonishing 4.8 kilometers long by 45 meters high. There'll be 2 outdoor power stations on either bank of the river, with the capacity to generate roughly 2,000 to 3,700 megawatts of power. The first step on the journey to build something as enormous as this kind of sets the tone for the rest of the project: the casual diversion of the Blue Nile River in 2013. Now, as dramatic as that sounds, it's actually pretty common when building dams. Here's how it works. Most dams are built over rivers, but to pour concrete you need a dry working area. So diversion channels or tunnels are formed around the side of a dam's location for the period of its construction. If you're going through hard rock, then explosives are normally used to clear a path, while soft soils and rocks are excavated. Once there's a dry space for workers, foundations are laid. They have to be strong enough to withstand the weight of the dam and the enormous water pressures acting on them. As we said, the Renaissance Dam will be 145 meters deep, almost the height of a skyscraper, and that 74 billion cubic meters of water behind it will create a lot of pressure. Those foundations absolutely cannot leak, so the soil and rocks in the ground below the dam have to be strength tested and are sometimes removed and replaced with stronger materials.
Saying desalinating the Mediterranean and pumping it south has been uneconomic for decades. It'll crumble Egypt land fertility. What? Desalinating the Mediterranean? I don't think that's what we're doing, though. Wait, where'd you... What?
Once a dam is complete and in place, the diversion channels around it are blocked, and water typically builds into a reservoir behind the dam structure. That's exactly what happened at the Hoover Dam on the Arizona-Nevada border. Water is let through openings in the dam as necessary, and often harnessed for hydroelectric power. The immense scale of the Renaissance Dam has likely required special on-site concrete batching plants to be established close to the worksite. They help to increase efficiency and can ensure more control over the delivery of materials, something that's essential once you've started a big concrete pour. But a lot of the construction details for the Renaissance Dam have been kept under wraps, and that's all due to the somewhat fragile political nature of this project. You see, the dam is being built here on the Blue Nile, just 30 kilometers upstream from the Sudan border, and it's caused fierce debate over exactly who owns the Nile and the water flowing in it.
Egypt's President Sisi says the Nile is a question of life, a matter of existence to Egypt.
It's worried that its share of the water will be reduced when Ethiopia starts to fill the massive dam.
There is no Egypt without water. We either have water or there is no future for us.
Further downriver is Egypt, and Egypt is, well, Egypt's pretty much entirely built around the Nile. An astounding 85% of the country's water comes from just this one source, and some 95% of the country's population live within a few kilometers of this famous river. Canals from the Nile irrigate farms and support cities, agriculture and fishing. The Nile has breathed life into this desert region for thousands of years, and if something were to happen to jeopardize that water source, well, the consequences could be disastrous.
It's like, okay, on the upside, the area that's making the dam is going to benefit vastly. Now, the downside is you could destabilize the entire African economy because it's all built around the one fucking river. That's like if somebody was like, if one of the northern states was like, hey, or sorry, one of the southern states is like, we're gonna dam the Mississippi. We're gonna dam it. Damming the Mississippi. Everybody north was like, but it'll flood all our homes and fuck up our whole way of life. How are we gonna get boats down it? We can't get boats down a dam. What are we gonna do about this? I wonder. So I wonder if the other surrounding countries are going to benefit from this, because you're already building a mega dam, right? You could probably build some sort of infrastructure to allow the usage of the benefit, the resources benefited from doing this project to the surrounding countries, I'd imagine. It's going to create a lot of power. And they might have priority line or something, but I feel like you could push a few lines out elsewhere.
And Egypt knows this. Now, to design any kind of dam, let alone a mega dam with a reservoir the size of London, you need a pretty solid grasp on engineering and maths. While the way you learn to solve equations at school may have been a bit daunting, today's video sponsor Brilliant.org teaches subjects like maths, science and engineering in a hands-on and visual way. Each course is broken down into short, bite-sized classes, which makes it easy to make regular. Let's get back to the Nile.
A whole minute ad?
Tensions in the region are high, and this dam seems to be at the center of it. Egypt was even reportedly prepared to bomb it to protect their stake in the Nile. So why would Ethiopia risk a potential war, all for a shiny new dam? Well, its government is hoping this megaproject will actually help lift the entire country out of poverty. Half of all Ethiopians today don't have access to electricity. The dam is going to change that. The country is already on the fast track to achieving its economic goals. Ethiopia has become Africa's fastest growing economy, in part boosted by massive investment in infrastructure. During this period of transformational growth, Ethiopia has managed to reduce the number of people living in extreme poverty dramatically, from over 50% of the population to 31%. It's been called the Ethiopian economic miracle and is becoming a model for other African countries. Major infrastructure projects play such an important
an inspiration to all of them. Or bomb some dams and start a war. I want to know why, bro, was all of Africa just on tip with no infrastructure? They're like, we're not building stuff to live here. We're just gonna live here. Don't build infrastructure. Plumbing, electricity. Fuck it. What are they spending their money on? I know they're not wealthy countries, you know what I mean? But come on, primary city hub infrastructure. Ethiopia's out here building a mega dam on the Nile. That's not cheap. These other countries can get plumbing. You know what I mean? I feel like they should. I may be speaking from a position of ignorance here. And I know like the shit's all expensive and how much the people can afford it is one thing, but like general infrastructure for like efficiency of living is better and improves quality of life. Whoa. It's not culturally important. Oh my God. I hate culture. Just kidding. I love culture. But like, except when it's stupid. It's like religious people not giving their like babies medicine that they need to live. Like, okay, kill your baby, you fucking Jesus freak.
Role in this process. For its part, Ethiopia has argued that the effects of the dam are going to be minimal on the countries that are downstream, while the benefits will be plentiful and can be shared. But the debate over who can lay claim to the waters continues. Today, talks between the countries have almost completely broken down, with no agreement met, despite the dam now being 90% complete and scheduled to be filled within 3 years. Whatever the outcome, this is a piece of infrastructure that's likely to reshape more than just rivers in the region. This video was made possible by Brilliant. You can learn more about that at the link below.
Everybody needs to get with it. I think most of these countries, I know this is going to be like difficult to figure out exactly what they want to do and all this and like how it's going to work and how it's going to benefit everyone and not fuck anybody over. But I really, really genuinely think like all of Africa needs to get on tip and like figure this out, because as a continent, your very few natural resources that you have need to be utilized. Like, you know, you're not getting rid of a river by damming it properly. You know what I mean? Shouldn't be to any insane effect level. You should be able to dam that up, harvest it for energy. You should be able to drop a couple dams in this bitch, if we're being honest. Should be able to drop a couple dams all up along the line, you know. Hey, let's put one up here, let's put one down here, let's put one down here. Dam it all up, get that energy, baby. Nobody has electricity, why not? Why not, you know? A long history of suppressing industrialism in Ethiopia and Sudan by Egypt. Yeah, that makes sense. That lines up. China's been undermining that in a bunch of Africa. Undermining, the industrial evolution. What's the benefit there? Does China own them? They've been undermining government suppression. Oh, that's cool. Wait. China W? China based? You're saying that China has been undermining government suppression of critical infrastructure and progressive evolution of industrialism in Africa? Blink once for yes, blink twice for no. Germany and China working together to deliver Industry 4.0 via not slavery to underdeveloped populations and thus industrializing and improving life. I don't like how you worded that. Fuck, is it good? Or, like... Is it good? Or it seems like it could be good or bad. It's a huge topic in engineering. It's not exactly benevolent. Okay. It's a good thing for bad reasons, it seems. And politicians are arguing or actively trying to lower the minimum wage here. It's been real bad for the hardest labor jobs. Lowering the minimum wage in any U.S. state and or country worldwide would be insane. Except Cali, maybe. But Cali's expensive as fuck. Lower wages are just a sign of wage theft? Well, yeah. Interesting. I'll have to check more into the Chinese involvement in Africa. Wait.
It's January 2017 at the headquarters of the African Union here in Ethiopia. An IT engineer is looking at the servers in this building, and something seems off. The engineer notices that often in the middle of the night, these servers are connecting to some server in Shanghai and uploading emails and audio files. The African Union headquarters was built in 2012. But it was not paid for by any African nation.
The impressive new headquarters of the African Union, entirely funded by the Chinese government.
This building was a $200 million gift from the Chinese government. It was designed and built by Chinese firms with Chinese money. And yes, the servers were installed by Chinese engineers, who, it appears, left an intentional backdoor into the servers so that they were easily accessible. The African Union IT team eventually removed these Chinese servers and installed new ones. The Chinese government literally offered to install them for them, but they declined. The local IT people also swept the building, and they found microphones embedded in the furniture and in the walls. The whole building was bugged and had been feeding audio and...
Bro, here's this $200 million building. Don't worry about the buzzing noise coming from all of your non-electronic accessories. All books come with camera lenses. What do you mean? What, you've never had a microphone lamp? You guys are really behind the times. Everybody in the modern world has microphone lamps. Come on.
Internal emails to China for like 5 years since the building was built. China building a headquarters for the African Union and then spying on it is a pretty good symbol of what China is up to in Africa. And that's what this video is about. It's about how a growing China has rushed into Africa, mainly by building a bunch of stuff. Roads, trains, dams, mines, ports. These projects are a part of China's growth as a superpower. And it shows how this country is...
But are they building railroads?
Projecting its power on the continent of Africa.
But there are questions here over why the headquarters of such an important African organization is entirely the work of Chinese construction, labor, and money.
Okay, so there's this very predictable thing that you see time and time again as countries get powerful. As a country gets rich, they often start looking outward, both economically and militarily. Let me explain what I mean here. 50 years ago, China was a very poor country with a huge population. But eventually they opened up to the world. They opened up their huge population as a workforce for cheap labor, and their economy exploded.
China is agrarian, urbanizing fast, you betcha, but still agrarian.
Most in terms of land, not population.
Come on, Michael.
No, you're wrong about this.
So now China is a very rich country. And remember, rich countries start looking outward. How can they project their power, connect with other countries to continue their growth? They do this for a couple of reasons. The first one is the economic reason. In the same way that the US got really rich and prosperous and started to look outward to China for cheap labor, China also got rich. And its labor eventually got expensive, wages went up, and China needed its own option for cheap labor and new growth opportunities. So they started pouring huge amounts of money, like $300 billion huge, into Africa.
I mean, cheap Chinese labor helped China expand. Cheap African labor helps them expand. I mean, you know, if they're getting like, if all of a sudden their quality of life is improving drastically based on like the servitude, paid servitude, you know, aren't they going to want more and continue themselves as it goes on? So it's like, I mean, infrastructure stuff, you might have a little dependencies going on at first and they might be great. So they're mad they didn't bomb them into the Stone Age first. So like, I mean, this seems like overall kind of good. Right? I mean, if you're a fan of goddamn roll. If you're a fan of modern economics and you don't care about cultural roots and the industrial obliteration of cultural infrastructure laid out in communities, then this is probably and arguably a good thing. In that sense. Sure, there's a ton of people that are like, these damn kids working in the factories, they never visit the shaman anymore. No one even cares about the rain festival. They're too busy working. What do you mean by ancient infrastructure? No, like the social, cultural structuring that's pre-existing, like the way of life. You know what I mean? Like their current existing way of life, which is very culturally based. Engineering ethics takes a Star Trek stance about influencing cultures. Star Trek? I'm not that much of a fucking nerd, so I don't know what you're talking about. Prime Directive? What?
Okay, so that's the economic reason. China grows really fast, their growth is slowing down, so they need to invest in emerging economies, is what the economists will call it.
Non-interface with primitive, non-warp species. What the fucking nerd code shit is this, dude?
Economies that haven't developed very quickly yet, but that with a little bit of investment could start to grow. Untapped markets. But the economic explanation is only half the story here. In China, economics and government power are not very separate. So to understand what China is really up to, you have to understand the geopolitical motives. And to do that, we gotta look at a map. Here are all the countries that China has projects in. And yes, I've just highlighted every single country on the African continent. I mean, besides this one down here, this little tiny country of Swaziland, they're the one holdout on all of this. These projects range from transportation projects like roads and trains, to energy like oil and dams, to real estate projects like housing developments, and then mining for things like copper. You have everything from
that's why they did it, right? Because they enjoy it.
Ethiopia,
not because of the
$6 billion Chinese-financed dam in Nigeria, to a massive suspension bridge in Mozambique, the longest in Africa. I mean, these projects are everywhere, even here on this tiny island off the coast, where China has poured millions of dollars to build housing, a stadium, an auditorium, a library, as well as their national parliament. China built it all. There are too many of these projects to even count.
So like any interference by outside cultures can become malicious colonization in a hurry, which is ethically opposed to the goal of sustainability and human welfare. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's like, you know, someone rich and powerful comes up and says, "Hey, little bro, I can get you to the big times, but you're going to have to do it my way." You know, and then that little bro has a decision to make, you know. They got to decide, like, do we want to do it your way and have an easy time, or do we want to do it the hard way ourselves? And really, that's up to them. They might fuck themselves in doing that. But it is up to them, and it is a decision they should all be able to make on their own. You know, someone offers help, they can... Hey, they're offering to help more than everybody else is, so, like, we're going to go with them. You know, and we'll see. I mean, Africa's pretty fucking big. I feel like it'd be hard to maintain, like, colonial rule over the span of Africa after establishing, like, well-built infrastructure. Potato heado. Potato heado. Oh, yeah. Hey, what's up, bud? England tried. Yeah. I mean, it's like you're giving them more infrastructure, more resources, more economic sustainability. I mean, overall, this seems like a good thing, marred by the fact, especially like from the Western world, that it's being done by China. The biggest issue with this is that China's doing it. Other than that, seems pretty cool.
And honestly, if you take it as
a fucking what's his name? Why can't I remember his name right now? What's the rapper that did all the shit in Africa? Was trying to build like an African city with its own, like an African super city with its own currency. Akon, yeah, fucking, hey man. Akon can't do it all by himself, bro. Someone had to help, you know what I mean?
The whole, a lot of these projects have been a major benefit and economic element. China built it all. There are too many of these projects to even count. And honestly, if
So generally, Chinese involvement in Africa seems to be pretty beneficial. The only downside being that China's the one doing it. And that's really from a Western perspective. But, like, let's be real. Akon wasn't going to do it all by himself. Outsource a little assistance. It works. Seems to be doing all right. Just saying.
If if you take it as a whole, a lot of these projects have been a major benefit and economic stimulus to these countries' economies. But why is China doing this? What are they up to? Well, in addition to all the economic value of investing in emerging markets, China's president also claims that they're doing this in the name of cooperation and friendship.
I mean, okay, you want to say like the $200 million building loaded with spy tech is an issue, right? Right. Or it's them protecting their investment. I mean, you know, there's a lot of perspective you can go. Is friendship spying? Yeah. They're just spying on them because they're friends. This is like, okay, like, so imagine your friend, right? Imagine your friend is a heroin addict. They are addicted to being an idiot and not bettering their lives. Right? Okay. So, that friend comes over. They seem a little sleepy. Do you check their bag? Do you check their bag? Or are you like, nah, we're friends. I'm not spying on you. Or do you, you know, just make a quick little bag check to make sure they're not doing heroin again? You know? So it really, like, it's one of those things where it's like it's like trying to tell if a woman is into you or not. We just don't have enough information right now. We really can't call it. We got to see what they do with that going forward. I feel China doesn't have their best interests in mind. Okay, anybody doing anything only has their own interests in mind. Just so you know, the human nature, you cannot commit a selfless act. It is fucking not possible. Even if you are doing something just to be nice, the only reason you do it is because it makes you feel good to do it. If you stopped feeling good doing it, you wouldn't do that shit anymore. It's like every act is selfish. It's just like, does it benefit both parties? You know what I mean? And they get a little African spying. Africa gets an insane amount of infrastructure investment in their economic evolution. The 5 corporations in a trench coat that are our government see you as carne por la máquina. Steak machine? Oh, meat for the machine. I mean, yeah. Everybody only has their own interests in mind. The quality people in this world make it so that their interests and the interests of those involved in their interests benefit both parties. Like, if a corporation gets rich off of your labor but pays you really well, hey, they are making like a lot of money, right? But like, I'm making a pretty good amount of money. So I might be okay with that. And that's like morally acceptable. If they're making a bunch of money and all of their employees are losing their homes, different story. I.e., modern American economy. I feel it is not in mind here. But that's perceptionary and opinion. It's morally acceptable to have a price? Well, morals are an aspect of perception to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, morals is perceptionary to start. It's morally acceptable to have a price? Yeah. Yeah. I don't suck dick, but you pull out $1 million fucking dollars and I'll suck that bitch dry. Suck one dick, my whole future set? You know what I could do with $1 million and investment? US would have nets too, but we don't culturally care enough to do it. Yeah, no, we just let it fucking, hey, you want to do it, bro? Do it over there. Quit making a mess.
The African way. Let's dig into this and actually see what these projects look like and how they are built, and if it truly is the African way, whatever that means. Okay, so there's this really impressive rail system that China built in Kenya. It goes from Nairobi to Mombasa in just under 4 hours, which is faster than any train in the United States, which, let's be honest here, isn't really saying much because here in the United States, we don't really know how to build trains anymore. We used to be really good at it, and now we're not. It's kind of a shame. And anyway, look at this.
This guy knows what's up. This guy knows what's up. We talked about this, chat. Look at that. Look at that. Because if anybody was here during our train stream, our history of trains stream, if anybody was here for that, now you understand the reference in this other video about infrastructure. Because you know why? Trains are fucking important. Our trains suck, our passenger trains suck, and our freight trains explode daily. Yeah, but no. Johnny, listen. Don't say anything bad about our freight train system. They only have issues because there's like a fucking billion of them, and they're bound to have problems. The US has the absolutely most impressive freight railway system in all of the world. The fact that we have the freight system that we do is the number one reason that our country is uninvadable. There is no reasonable or logical outcome that says that a country could invade us, land, on our mainland, and get fucking anywhere before getting mopped. Our passenger train system, however, is absolute fucking AIDS. Last episode of Boy Autism. Yeah. True. Yeah. Our passenger trains, we don't really have them. It simply hasn't been invested in. But our freight train system is absolutely insane. Insane. And unironically, the fact that it's privatized is the reason it's so nutty.
Train in Kenya. This railway system was a $3.6 billion project, the most expensive infrastructure project since Kenya's independence. And it was mostly entirely paid for by a giant loan from China's state-run bank. So it was financed by China, designed by Chinese engineers, and then built by Chinese construction firms that sent Chinese workers to hire locals and manage the project. And now it's a Chinese company that actually runs the thing. If you ride this train, you're going to see all the safety announcements and all of the documentation in Chinese, in Mandarin. It is very clear who financed and built this thing. It looks like China just parachuted in and plopped this thing down in Kenya. And now Kenya has billions of dollars of debt that they have to pay back to China eventually. In fact, 72% of all of Kenya's debt is owed to China. And this railway was meant to reduce congestion on the highway that runs parallel to it, but it hasn't done that. In fact, this railway cuts right through like these two national parks.
While the train will offer passengers a view of a lifetime while passing through the national park, conservationists are concerned that this construction will affect the ecosystem and the wildlife that live here.
And it's actually not doing what it said it was going to do. So yes, Kenya has this big shiny railway, but it wasn't really solving African issues in the African way. Meanwhile, the Chinese construction workers who came to build this thing were caught treating the local workers very poorly, making them sit at separate tables during meal breaks, punishing them when they didn't complete deadlines or take out the garbage on time. That mixed with the fact that some of these Chinese workers were taking bribes as a part of a huge corruption scheme with this railway. And it's clear that this project wasn't actually about supporting the local environment. It just left Kenya with a giant pile of debt and a big shiny railway. But listen, that's not always the case. There are tons of these projects, and some of them are truly helping the locals, like this big, beautiful, shiny road here in Lesotho. This used to be a rough gravel road, and it is now a beautiful, shiny road that is helping the locals move around in their country. So it's definitely...
Oh, yeah, newsflash, Chinese are racial supremacists since time. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ass flash news hole. Hey, look who woke up. Yeah, no, I'm very familiar. A lot of Asian countries, a lot of the people in Asian countries are actually super fucking racist. Like, but I think in general it's very similar to the US in the sense that, like, wait, Meat Shield. Fucking, I missed saying, I don't think I said, I read your thing, but I think I was in the middle of talking. If you're still here, Meat Shield Slut Bun, welcome in and hello. I apologize for missing your chat. If you're not here, whoops, I fucked up. My grandma was, and she lived here for 60 years. 4-minute ads, what the fuck, LOL, I'm missing the juice. Is what it is, brother. You can't even hear me say that, but it is what it is. And it's not 4 minutes, it's 3. Ain't missing anything? Yeah. You're not missing anything at really any point. I'll say it again 7 more times. My grandma was, and she lived her for 60 years. See, I think it's one of those, like, it's like, it's very similar to, like, the white people thing, but they're more honest about it. Asians are just more honest and upfront about every single thing that pops up in their heads, I feel. So, like, if an Asian person is racist, they'll just be like, fuck you, you know? Go die. Skin dirty. Or something. You know what I mean? Where, like, white people are trying to hide it. And other races really just got to pick on one smaller race, because if they pick on the bigger race, they're, like, fucked. Grandma is Korean. It was more subtle. But the Koreans are a little more... The Koreans are more eloquent with how they communicate in, like, English sense. Like, Korean is definitely, it's a big thing with, like, the languages. Like, the language kind of denotes, like, who and how the people are, because, like, the Korean language is a little more intricate in the sense that, like, it has, like, tonal inflections. I'm pretty sure China's a completely non-tonal language. I know Korea's big into just, like, using English words too. They're just like, hey, we don't have a word for that. Use the English one. They already got one. Use it.
Definitely a mixed bag. And listen, I get it. China, you want to give a $5 billion loan to Nigeria to build a dam because Nigeria has 200 million people, many of them young, and you want to help them become a booming economy so that you can get in on some of that growth. Oh, and you love the fact that you don't have to adhere to any environmental standards while you're doing these projects, which I know you love, China. I know it. That's the business rationale. We're looking for new economies to invest in and be a part of their growth. But if you look a level deeper, you won't just see a bunch of investment projects. You'll see a bunch of free gifts from China. And I'm intrigued by especially the political ones. Like when China shows up and builds a new parliament building, which they've done.
White people will be like, I swear I grip my purse like this with anyone I ride the elevator with. There's even a Korean dish called army-based stew, which is named for the stews they'd make from the surplus army rations. Yeah. You ever have a cheese roll-up? Doesn't mean I'm sucking Mexico's dick. I mean, I will, but like, it doesn't mean that I am. Koreans and boomers fucking dick ride wartime food so hard.
For 7 countries in Africa. Or when China offers $32 million free dollars to build a new headquarters for ECOWAS, which is basically the economic union in Western Africa. They do this for free. We will build you a new headquarters. Well, let me be clear. There is no such thing as a free gift in international relations. Everything has strings attached. So
you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of like the OG being like, "Here, young blood, I got you a new whip. Go enjoy that new whip. And I'm gonna call you to be a getaway driver whenever I fucking need. Heard?" My mom's favorite comfort food is stewed tomatoes and crackers, not soup, tomatoes.
Major part of all of this investment in Africa is China investing in its future as a global superpower who needs to have friends and has historically not had a lot of friends throughout the world because the big boy United States has been doing all the friending by giving people stuff and making their lives better so that they can be allies. So China is getting in on this. And China has used their checkbook to make friends with literally every single country in Africa. Of course, besides Swaziland, the teeny little country in the south that has been the one country that has held out on all of this. In funneling all of this money into these countries, China has been able to get all of these countries, besides Swaziland, to not recognize Taiwan anymore and to support China instead. The TLDR on that is that you can't support Taiwan and China because they both think that they're China, so you have to support one or the other, and so China has been getting everyone to denounce Taiwan and say that they support China. That's a whole other thing. I'm making videos about that. Suffice it to say that China has been using its checkbook to get all of these people to be their friends. It's sort of like the rich kid in middle school who like brings you an MP3 player because he wants you to be his friend, and you're like, sweet, if you give me your MP3 player, I'll be your friend. I grew up in the early 2000s. In my middle school, there were MP3 players, so sorry for the throwback. But remember when China...
I like that me and him made the same analogy, right? Like at the root, we made the same analogy. But he used a rich kid and MP3 players, and I used gang activity and getaway vehicles. Same thing.
Built the
If you don't understand mine, hopefully you understand his.
African Union headquarters and then bugged the entire building so that they could spy on the leaders and their emails and their conversations. That is a perfect representation of the strings that are usually attached to these projects. But perhaps
we do that all the time,
obvious,
though.
But more dangerous strings attached are the debts.
You owe us. Are you gonna owe us?
John Adams said it best when he said, quote, "There are 2 ways to conquer and enslave a country. One is by the sword and the other is by debt." It's a pretty intense quote, but it really applies here. So many of these projects have been paid for by Chinese money through loans. African nations diving deep into debt. We all know that when you owe someone money, that person has a lot of power over you, especially if you get to the point where you can't pay them back. And this isn't just theoretical. A few years ago, China helped Sri Lanka build a port here in the southeastern coast. It was done with a Chinese loan. With time, Sri Lanka struggled to pay back that loan. So in 2017, China swooped in and said, "Can't pay back your debt? No worries. Just lease us this port. Let us have it for 99 years. And Sri Lanka's like, that doesn't sound great, giving a piece of our sovereign territory to China, which they could potentially use for military, but we're in so much debt and they're offering to relieve some of that debt if we give them this port. Okay, so this port now belongs in part to China. This sets a dangerous precedent. that could be applied to many of these nations in Africa who have sunk themselves deep into debt with China and may not be able to pay it back in the future. So China is growing and honestly behaving like any superpower would when they are growing this quickly. I mean, if we wanted to make a video about how the US is projected power throughout the years, it would be a lot worse of a video, okay? So let's just make it clear that China's a superpower, they're doing their superpower thing. This is very normal superpower behavior. Doesn't make it right, it just makes it very normal and typical. China has taken a specific interest in Africa, which has led to countless infrastructure projects, which have been, honestly, an impressive sight to behold, but has raised questions of what are the actual motives here? They're not just business and economic. And the bigger question that I want to keep an eye on going forward is, how is all this debt gonna play out? How will African nations who are so deeply indebted to China have to service that debt in the future? And what will happen if they can't pay it back? Okay, before you go, I want to tell you about the sponsor of today's video.
Interesting.
Which have been, honestly, an impressive sight to behold.
So, so China's the first superpower to take an invested interest in African infrastructure, more or less. Interesting. I mean, yeah, like he said, if we made a video about the U.S., it'd be a lot more. It'd be way worse. It'd be equally bad or worse with almost any superpower country across the entirety of the world. But I know U.S. doesn't like China. So if China's doing good, we're mad. Stop doing good, China. So, if you lived, let's have a thought real quick. Only reason I'd be pro-American versus China in terms of that is our personal freedoms versus theirs. Yeah. Now look at the Egypt-Ethiopia dam project. Knowing China is behind it. Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Okay. It gives a lot of power and regulation of a region's natural resources in a country that isn't even there. Like U.S. government, Panama Canal almost, maybe.